Alright guys, such a comic again today. I hope you're doing well and enjoying your day so far. Scrappy giving his thoughts on Miami after a controversial weekend with all sorts of drama hitting the main stage during the tournament. The OpTic guys also giving some of their perspective on the matter, especially frustrations about the way they finished, but optimism going into the World Championship nonetheless. Very much enjoyed your thoughts in the comments. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always. This is formal on the, well, in this image anyway, having won the Halo Championship. It was actually pretty cool. After OpTic played their match against Thieves in the COD side, the OpTic fans were streaming out of there, which to be fair usually happens, but they were not streaming out to leave the venue or whatever. They were streaming 5 minutes down the walkway, like the massive hall, to the Halo Championship to go and watch OpTic play there in the finals against FaZe, which they went on to win. So yeah, it was honestly really impressive. Formal got the victory and, you know, done it again, making the run all the way through losers. But can they keep it up for the rest of the season? We'll see, but I think it's a really cool story for Formal and these guys, and obviously Scump was buzzing about it as well, watching the championship unfold as it did, and Formal and the team taking the victory. It was just cool to see it all happen at the same time, just a couple of minutes away. I mean, it would be amazing to see OpTic back in something like Counter-Strike as well, and then a couple of minutes further down, you know, the hall, you've then got the Counter-Strike auditorium, which I didn't really get to see much of this weekend, unfortunately, because, you know, I'd have loved to go and watch a little bit of the CS, but it was so far away that, like, to me, I mean, it was funny, when I booked my hotel, I was like, oh, it's only 10 minutes walk from the venue, but it was 10 minutes walk from the CS auditorium side of the venue, because when I booked it, I wasn't really sure, like, where the COD stuff was going to be, but the COD stuff was in the hall all the way at the other end of the venue, which you wouldn't think is really a big deal, and it isn't really, like, it was fine, but it was a bit of a trek. It was a little bit different to Insomnia 62, if you guys went to CDL Birmingham 2018, that venue is at the NEC, and it's more of like a square or a rectangle, so if I leave one hall where, let's say, the COD is happening, I might be able to walk left and then right around a corner, and then I'll find the next, you know, let's say, building there in a different side. It's like Anaheim, for example. It's like a big circle, I suppose, part of it anyway, and the convention centers are slightly, or like different halls are more accessible maybe, whereas this arena, like as great as it was, like as phenomenal as DreamHack was, and I'm buzzing to hopefully do another one of these tournaments at some point in the near future, like, it was just a big long line, and it meant that, you know, getting somewhere could be a challenge, right? I think for a lot of the attendees, it wasn't a big deal, but I know that for some of us, you know, working the event and stuff, it was. Things were logistically a little complicated, but, like, this Texas baby, you know, the arenas are going to be massive. That's what it is. We also saw yesterday was really cool that aBeZy is back on OpTic, right? Of course, played for them for some time, and, you know, now doing content for them and stuff. Formal repost of this, thought was kind of nice. But the regular season is officially done and dusted. OpTic, they had a top 8, top 4 to end the season. Terrible season by OpTic standards. Terrible season, right? Like, 7th in the championship standings. Like, we've not seen OpTic be 7th ever. The only time they're ever 7th is when they bombed out of champs, you know, in 2015, 2016, where they came 7th a couple of times. And it's not like we haven't seen OpTic place that way before. But still, right? Like, to happen as it did this season, with all the drama, with all the chaos, I don't know what it is with OpTic, right? Like, every season there's some absolute crazy story. But this year, it may have a stronger conclusion than we have seen before, right? Because they've gone through the absolute gauntlet over the year. The Kenny Pred situation, Pred was gone, Huke was in, then Huke was gone, like Pred was back in, and Pred was gone again, Kenny's gone for Skyz. Oh my god, what a timeline. Do they finish the year reasonably strongly at all things being considered? I think Huke has actually been a really impressive force this season for that team, and that continues to be the case. Dashy's not been as, you know, on fire as he would like. Certainly the most recent tournament, I guess I should actually bring up some of the numbers here, right, to see how he fared on the weekends. Because, yeah, Dashy's recent performances with Mercury's in the team, look, you watch Dashy's PFE, he's still shooting straight, right? Nobody really denies that. But over the course of the actual tournament recently, it's not been quite as strong. So, you know what, let's just deselect all, and I'll just select the matches that OpTic played this tournament so we can have a look at the actual numbers for this past weekends. Yeah, Dashy had a 0.9 on the weekends. Pretty interesting that OpTic's numbers overall, actually I need to select the Ultra Series as well. There we go. 0.95 on the weekend for Dashy. Huke had a 1.01, Mercury's a 1.02, Shotzzy with a 0.98. So, yeah, they played 4 series. 2 of them were against FaZe and Thieves. Those are going to be difficult. I mean, if I deselect those on the site, these were the, you know, the stats in the series that they won, which, you know, maybe Huke and Mercury's in terms of slay rating and KD were probably some of the standouts. But yeah, I don't know. There was just a couple of maps this weekend for Dashy. Certainly the elimination maps, the game 4 of the series. They were down 2-1, needed to win game 4, and Dashy would have a stinker, right? Like, that, of course, was unfortunate. It's not like he was horrific, but yeah, the Slayer rating wasn't very high. To be fair, that does depend a lot on the maps that you play. It's one of the reasons why the Lion Man cards are... Look, I'm not going to disrespect Lion Man, but they were a little bit cheese because sometimes teams play different maps. Like, if you play a lot of Skyline and a lot of Vault and stuff, Hardpoint, your Slayer rating is going to be higher, so you're going to look better. This is how it is, because of the numbers and the way the cards work and stuff. So it's all a relative game, really. So really you're looking at, okay, what was Dashy's Slayer rating compared to Mercury's? And look, significantly lower, right? So look, Dashy's, since the Mercury's transition, hasn't been quite as strong. And it is an interesting talking point, right? Because you guys probably remember last year's World Championship where they won it. Dashy was under so much pressure, last year's champs, right? Like, wow, I couldn't imagine the pressure on him to finally get the ring on the board after, you know, trying for 7 years. He was considered to be the best player without a ring at that moment. Like, Octane had got his a couple of years before. And, you know, it was pretty much Dashy who the pressure was on to finally win the championship. People would always say, Dashy, you know, great player, great talent. He's won a few things, but he's not got the ring, has he, right? So loads of pressure on Dashy. And he wasn't great at last year's champ. Certainly at the end of the tournament, it felt like the pressure was understandably getting to him, but he probably didn't play his best stuff. But the rest of the team not carried him through. Dashy played his part, but Dashy was not exactly cooking in the grand finals of last year's World Championship. This year, I think the general feeling was, okay, he's going to, you know, now the monkey's off the back, as it were, and he's got the ring on the board. He's going to be loosened up a little bit. And maybe that will be true come the World Championship as well. I'm not going to say this tournament is going to define everything. It's very possible that Dashy goes to champs with less pressure on his shoulders, I don't know, and plays some great stuff. But fundamentally, it is a bit of team play, and OpTic do have a little bit of work to do. They finished top 4 in the ends. Look, Mercury's is a very interesting question because when they signed Ghosty a couple of years ago and they didn't win anything, they came seconds. This year, OpTic are now 4th, and who knows, maybe they come to champs, get 3rd, 4th, something similar. Difficult to think that OpTic could win it right now. They could, but it's, you know, FaZe and Thieves. You got to be one of those guys, maybe both of those teams to win it, and beating either of those teams in the best of 9 in the grand finals, a bit of a challenge, right, to say the very least. But Ghosty made top 12 or top 2, and in part of the series that they played, they still dropped him at the end of the season anyway. New player, you know, Ghosty wasn't maybe the easiest to work with and team with at the time. I think nowadays, you know, look, at the end of the day, Ghosty was a rookie, lots to learn. Mercury's is a rookie, lots to learn, right? But I think OpTic should also probably learn their lesson, and getting rid of Ghosty was not a bad shout. Like, signing Kenny, I thought at the time it was probably the right decision given what the team needed. And look, it proved to be the right decision. They won the World Championship the following year. But obviously Ghosty's now going on to do phenomenal things on the Los Angeles Thieves and had a pretty maybe underrated, very solid weekends. Mercury's, on the other hand, I think OpTic should probably learn their lesson to say, look, let's not do this again, right? Mercury should be staying. I think his spot is very much solidified for, I mean, it should be anyway, unless there's things behind the scenes that we're not really seeing or understanding. It would be difficult to imagine Mercury's is going anywhere. Shotzzy, as Hex made very clear, is not going anywhere at all unless he decides to leave. If the bag is right, maybe it's possible, but it's pretty unlikely. Huke has massively improved this year. Like, I had a quick chat with Ghosty last night, and yeah, he said that Huke is today so much a stronger player than he was 2 years ago when Ghosty was on this team. You know, the decisions that Huke makes on the map, I don't know, he's seemingly turned a bit of a corner. And I think that's true for the majority of this season. It's not like he doesn't make his mistakes, he does. But I don't think Huke makes mistakes at a higher frequency than Shotzzy. And, you know, and sometimes maybe even a lower frequency. And that's good enough, right? Because Shotzzy, yeah, he's going to go rogue sometimes. But he's a pretty smart player in the game. Pretty smart player. And if Huke is not, you know, making brain-dead plays like he has in the past on the higher frequency that he previously did, I mean, I've seen Huke this time, you know, hold spawns, hit a rotation, decide not to go for the CDL when he could have done, right? Like, I don't know what's got into this guy, but it's great to see because the talent on Huke has always been undeniable. So Huke and Shotzzy are probably feeling very confident, especially for next year's game with the wall running and all this type of stuff. You know, there'll be talk about whether that is a duo that they want to keep. Mercury shouldn't be going anywhere. You wouldn't imagine Dashy's going anywhere either, right? But, you know, if you don't win champs, then you got to think about what could we do. So, yeah, I'm just fascinated to see what this team kind of does for the rest of the season because their champs result and EWC result is going to be particularly relevant to what they decide to do, even if they could try and find anyone to make the team better. Difficult to imagine that they can. Huke would be the obvious man to look at, just historically, because he's been dropped off the team a million times. but he's definitely been playing better lately, right? Now, the other thing, just to quickly note, I mentioned the DreamHack event earlier. The next DreamHack, or like there is one in Stockholm coming up at the end of November. And it is plausible, if everything goes to plan, that we could have a COD event in Stockholm at the end of the year. So we'll see about that. Rotation Ant talks about it. To my understanding, this is absolutely plausible right now. But I wanted to share a couple of clips. This was a pretty interesting stat here from Ghosty, right? Of course, finally winning a second major championship. It's pretty rare that a player plays a tournament, wins a championship for the first time, and then wins again the next time. It's probably not happened all that often. This is what Scrappy had to say, though, having a few words on Miami after what was a great run for Thieves this weekend, but he's not still yet putting Miami into that category of serious contenders for any sort of championship.
All right? My man Scrap, okay? When I sat up here and I talked to you, you guys said that we wanted to go through the toughest route to be able to get this trophy. We wanted to take down the best. And today, you guys took down OpTic, you guys took down Miami, and you guys took down FaZe to go back-to-back. How does that feel?
I mean, come on now. You tried to sneak Miami in there, but we're not going to let that slide. Nah, but we'll be waiting for him at fucking champs. Anyone that wants it at champs, we're ready.
And you heard it right here, okay? And you know what? I think I'm getting it from the back. Guys, do you guys know your tournament MVP? It's Scrap, everybody! Make some noise for him! Now,
Yo, hold on. Let me say something.
Say something.
Hello? Is this shit on? Yo, I don't give a fuck about any of these MVPs. What we went through this past tournament was an absolute grueler, and I just can't be more proud to play with these guys and win these tournaments, so I appreciate everyone.
let me get that mic from you, man, okay?
Are these words going to come back to bite Scrap? Look, we'll see. At the end of the day, I don't really believe in the Juju monster, as it were, but I don't know, I think you can get in other people's heads and stuff like this. But to be fair, this season, there have been a few words exchanged that have come back to bite certain players, and it looked like it was going to happen for Envoy and Thieves this most recent weekend. Envoy was talking all this stuff online. Miami come out, they beat them. But then, when it mattered on the championship Sunday, it was 3-0 when it mattered, ... You know the quote from Drazah. So, yeah, anyway, Thieves give their take. As we know, though, looking at the bracket from earlier today for the World Championship, it is absolutely possible that we could get a rematch between Thieves and Miami in the first round of, or the second round of champs. That is not implausible by any means. But yeah, very much intrigued to your thoughts in the comment section below. Did want to quickly look at just the grand final stats again in a bit of detail. So much red here, right, between these two respective teams. But yeah, aBeZy with a 0.9. We saw earlier today he wasn't very happy with his play in the grand finals. Cellium had another great tournament, I think, by, his standards. We can look at FaZe's numbers because we looked at Thieves' numbers slightly earlier. Yeah, I'll just deselect again and select the ones that we have here played this past weekends. Cellium was great, but Simp was really the MVP of the weekends. Look, Simp at a 1.2, Cell at a 1.1, Drazah and aBeZy had basically a 1 flat. But, and that's, fine, it's acceptable. But obviously what really matters is when you play Thieves in the grand finals, and then they honestly put up a great fight, but they could have been beaten more convincingly here. Like, the maps that they lost, honestly, weren't really that close. Like, the maps they won were gruelers. Thieves will feel like they should have won the Protocol, and they'll feel like they could have won the Skyline. So, I don't know. Come out of this series, FaZe always put up a fight, but when they were down, when it was 2-2, I still thought Thieves were winning the series. And that's what we saw. So I think Thieves, will recognize after playing Thieves in that, they're like, yeah, damn, those guys are nice. And maybe there's a little bit of a gap between the two teams. I think it is close. It's definitely close. But having watched yesterday's series, I do think that Thieves are, maybe they're S+ tier and FaZe are S tier, something like that right now, rather than both being on the same level. But yeah, definitely intrigued to your thoughts on all of this stuff in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new, take care, and I'll see you next time.